Every journey begins with a step. The road can often be challenging and filled with obstacles, but every step forward is progress. Welcome to the Pathways for Women Conference, where we honor Women's Equality Day, which commemorates women gaining the right to vote. We have learned so much from those who came before us. We are inspired by the drive and leadership of women who went from working at companies to leading them. We are strengthened by the tenacity of those who fought for equal pay and to have their voices heard. Each step is progress, and Pathways serves as a catalyst to help women of all backgrounds and professions move forward. You will hear from trailblazing professionals who represent the very essence of perseverance and success, share invaluable insights and strategies to propel your career. You will forge meaningful connections, expand your network, and find unwavering support. Welcome to Pathways, where we will ignite change, shatter glass ceilings, and pave the way for a brighter, more inclusive future. Your journey begins now. Please welcome to the Pathways stage, California State Controller, Malia Cohen.
All right. You like that? Everybody needs a walkout song. Do you have a walkout song? Nothing gets you out of the bed in the morning? Your alarm goes off and you just walk out. All right, well, good luck with that. I suggest you get a walkout song because you need a little theme, a little pep in your step, right? Something to get you motivated, get you fired up so that you can continue making a way in the world. How are you guys? Welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited and very proud of the CalPERS team, the executive team, the staff that have brought us together. Thank you very much for your leadership and your guidance and for this wonderful convening. This afternoon, we're just kicking off for a very memorable conference. I want to welcome one and all to the third annual Pathways for Women Conference. This, ladies, and the men who love us, this is indeed our day to ignite the flame within, okay? The motivation to draft a fresh strategy to success so that we can go for it. And if you had any doubt in your mind whether you had the strength or the wherewithal to go for it, before you leave this conference, you will know without a shadow of a doubt that everything that you need to be successful is already in you. You just have to unleash it. You just have to be bold. You just have to get out there, and you just have to do it. So today and the next couple days, you will hear from speakers that are going to inspire you and uplift you and motivate you and get you ready. So this is an opportunity for us to begin to create a very great strategy. And it's quite honestly a strategy that myself and my team that we put together that brought me here to be standing before you today. You see, it's by no mistake that California elected the first African-American state controller. In 175 years of California statehood, there's opportunity for each and every one of us. We just have to be bold to go through and to take it. My journey really started in elected office about 15 years ago when I ran for San Francisco supervisor in a very heated and contentious race in San Francisco. I wasn't the only woman, I wasn't the youngest, I wasn't the only native San Franciscan. Every kind of way that you would look to dissect a segment in an electoral race, we struggled. But one thing that we did not struggle, one area where we had it down packed, was we knew how to work hard. We were the first in and the last out. And then, after I got elected to the Board of Supervisors, you see me rolling up my sleeves, because I'm getting hot up here, I'm getting myself fired up. Woo, about to put my hair in a ponytail, because it became to work. I ran for an obscure business the California State Board of Equalization, which is a elected property tax system here in the state of California. And I was told by folks in Sacramento, lobbyists, I guess it's no mistake, most of them were men, all of them were men. They said, you know, it's never been done. I don't think you can run from the county level in San Francisco to run for office in Sacramento for such an obscure board when you haven't served in the legislature. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, well, actually, no, Malia, there's one person that did it, and that was Kamala Harris. She went from district attorney to AG. And I said, well, hell, if she could do it, I can do it. And I did. So I use that as a teachable moment to never get dissuaded. You gotta not listen to those voices of doubt in your own head, and definitely not give any credence to the haters that are out there. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. Applause. I know I had you on your seat. You were like waiting for another one-liner, but I don't have one. That was it. Period. Okay? Thank you. So today we are all here so that we can learn and we can grow, and most importantly, break down barriers. It is our time, it is our moment. Barriers are breaking down all around us, and I know you see it in your own career, you see it in your own companies, and you see it in the communities that you surround yourself with. It is time for you to take your role in this process of breaking down these barriers, closing the gaps, and most importantly, creating equal opportunity for people of all backgrounds, all race, religions, creeds, and sexual orientations. Now is the time. And friends, together we can make that happen right now. We have the tools that we need, and we have the community connections. And thank goodness we have Kimberly Brown here to guide us on our path. So, Kimberly Brown, she is a career and leadership development expert with 13 years of experience. 13 years ago, she decided to stop watching the game from the sideline and to push up her sleeves and get in the game. Kimberly Brown is a shot caller and a playmaker. She's made a career in career development professional, and she has honed in on the skills and being able to see trends that help women, particularly women of color, that are holding them back from promotion. She's giving them tools, techniques to help them make a way. She knows firsthand how to solve many of these challenges that some of you might be thinking are holding you back. On her own career journey, Kimberly has learned that there is so much more to her career in leadership development beyond just having a high-paying job. It's about creating actionable strategies that enable professionals to do more, to be more, and most importantly, to achieve more. She knows the pattern that holds people back and the strategies to propel them forward. So whether you are just beginning your career, whether you're thinking about ending your career, and you see that it's winding down, or maybe you find yourself somewhere in between, wherever you find yourself, Ms. Brown will provide guidance to help you make the most of the gifts that you have to offer. So Kimberly is here today. I am honored to be able to introduce her to you this afternoon. You are going to have a wonderful discussion. Well, not discussion, because that implies that you'll be responding. You'll be listening, as I tell my 3-year-old, first-time listener, active ears. But she's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the framework that she has developed and framework that she's developed and she's published in a book. And this book is entitled Next Move, Best Move, Transitioning into a Career You'll Love. And if you're really nice, I hear she's working on a second book, and she might share some tidbits from her second book. She already knows what to do and how to do it. Now she's here to share with us those secrets. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Miss Kimberly Brown.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here, and I have to say immediately, that's probably the best intro I have ever had. So whoever has the recording, we need to copyright that after. Everywhere I go is going to be using that. I am so excited to be here with you today. I can't see most of you, but that makes me a little less nervous, so that works out too. I am here from New Jersey, so the other side of the US, and you got a lot about my background in career and leadership development. I joke and I tell folks that I am a personal and professional development junkie. Since the beginning of my career, I've always been that person who said, send me to the conference, let me take the notes, let me figure it out, and I've dedicated my life to making sure I can help others do the same. Fun facts about me, I'm an auntie 2 times. I noticed today I always share a fun fact about myself. I have one nephew who is my pride and joy. He's my favorite first nephew. That's how I say it, favorite first nephew. He was so easy as a baby. I said he was pack and play. Anywhere I went, he was by my side. My second nephew, my second favorite nephew, he has been a little harder. His only word he said for a long time was no. He never looked like he was happy to be there, didn't want to be touched, didn't want to be held, didn't want to do anything unless he felt like doing it. But each time I speak, I realize I have a new milestone for him. Before I used to say he never smiled, but now he's at that phase where he calls my phone randomly, so I always have to make sure it's on Do Not Disturb, because he wants to tell me what he's eating, what he did, and he's a lot more friendly. My only child I have right now is a poodle mix. His name is T'Challa. If anyone here has a poodle, you'd assume that my dog was probably black and brown, but I didn't know poodles change colors. So he is a light gray and cream now. So folks always look at me and be like, T'Challa? Like Black Panther? And I'm like, let me show you a baby picture, I promise. So with that today, I'm excited to talk to you about making your next best move. We're going to go over the 4 main parts of my book. And before we do that, I have a few questions for you. This is going to be a little bit harder because I can't see too well, so that just means you're going to have to raise your hand really high for me. Do you know, by a show of hands, the next logical step for yourself in your career? And raise it high so I can see it. The next step. Okay, perfect. When you raise it high, I can see it. Perfect. The next logical step for yourself. And if you know that next step, do you know what the #1 hurdle is in order for you to make that move? By a show of hands. Okay, I see less. Hopefully by the end of the presentation today, you'll have a little bit more so that you're able to make that next move with ease. So I want to bring you back to 2008. This is me with my parents. They are very happy. My dad especially. He's a man who doesn't smile too often, but he was smiling today. Why? Because I was graduating and I was not coming back home. And that is all he was very excited about that day. And whenever I look back at this picture, I remember that day. I was getting an award. I was so excited. But in hindsight, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I immediately, after the award ceremony, after graduation, I got really scared. And I realized in our career, so many times we have those moments where we could be excited about a milestone, but still have no idea what we are going to do. So when I talk about making your next move and transitioning into a career you'll love, I thoroughly believe that we spend 40+ hours a week at work. 40+ hours. When I worked in corporate America, I led a global team at American Express for a little while. 40 hours was a light week. Most of the time, it wasn't 40. And I believe that if you are in a job where it does not bring you joy, it is not connected to who you are, your passions, your skills, and your interests, it is really hard to have a good life because we can't make up 40 hours. Saturday and Sunday are not enough. Whether you're remote, hybrid, in office, you have to have some semblance of love and excitement for what you do so that you can have a robust love in your life. So role progression. For me, that always starts out with connecting with a role that you're interested in moving up. That's always the first step. I thoroughly believe that you can have a job, you can have a job to work, but to be in a job where you're excited about upward mobility, that is the first logical step. Next up, we have to start to conform. And many times we don't necessarily like the word conform, but I'm asking you to go with me here. Conforming normally means that you're pushing yourself in a way that you don't want to, but when you get a new job, we've all been in that period of you have to figure out how they did it before. How can I do what they've done and do it successfully so I can at least check off the tasks that I'm responsible for every single week. Next up is copying. This is for me where it gets excited. When you get to put your stamp on things. Many times, very senior leaders are always asked, what is the legacy that you are going to leave at this organization? But I challenge many folks to think, no matter where you are, what is the legacy you want to leave? And that legacy comes with adding your stamp, your special sauce. Next, we have challenge. And this is where you start to challenge the existing ideas or ways of doing things because you know it could be just a little bit better. This can create some friction, but generally, when you know your stuff, you can confidently take those actions. And last but not least, you stand up in support of yourself and your mission and your vision because you know what is to be true and you can be confident in your skills. One of my favorite books is called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Anyone here read that? It's a mindset book, one of my favorites. I don't see a lot of hands for that one. If you haven't, it's literally one of my favorite books. And he talks about getting into your zone of genius. And the zone of genius is the place where no one can touch you. When you think about athletes, we just had the Olympics, right? When you look at some of, especially the running, right? Anyone who's sprinting, when you look at the athletes who are yards ahead of anyone else, imagine that being zone of genius. That's the perfect depiction. When you see the finish line and it was clear, nobody can touch them. That's what we want in our careers. We want to figure out what is our zone where there's no question that you're doing the best that you can and that you are number one in that arena. For me, when all of these things happened, this is where the magic happened. This is where the book happened. This is where news happened. This is where I can confidently stand up and do so many different things because I'm in that zone of genius. And that is truly my goal and my wish for all of you today, that we figure out what is that X factor, what is that zone of genius, so you can transition into a career that you love. Now, when I say career transition, in this room, I know we have people from all over California, from all different organizations. Don't worry, I won't ask if your next move is not at the job you have. We could talk later. I'll be at the reception, it's okay. But I want you to think about the different types of transition. It's not just you having to leave where you are to go to someplace else. It's any type of career movement, internal or external to your company. It could be graduating with a degree, accepting a promotional, or I like to joke and say a power lateral move that's aligned. Or it could be the transition from deciding that you are no longer just an employee and you want to be a leader in your own right. And leader, let me tell you, has nothing to do with title. Because I'm fairly certain, I won't ask you to raise your hand for this one, but I'm fairly certain we've all had a boss who had no idea what they were doing. None. But yet they got paid more than you. So that the leadership part has nothing to do with title. It is all about your mindset and how you're approaching the work that you do every single day. So we're going to kick it off with part one. You must get clear on where you're coming from before you decide where you're going. The first step in transitioning into a career you love is self-assessment. You have to understand who you are, your skills, your weaknesses, all of the things that make you tick and make you happy in the world of work. I joke, when I used to work in talent acquisition and we used to interview candidates, and candidates would give you that answer back in the day when you said, well, what are your weaknesses? And they'd be like, I am just such a perfectionist that it's just so difficult for me to not give you 100% all the time. I am such a hard person to have. Like, I know you probably don't want to hire me because I'm just too perfect. I'm like, those answers used to kill me because I used to always say that person lacks self-awareness. And if I hire you, I'm fairly certain if I sit with you and watch you do your job, I will figure out what your weakness is really, really fast. And I would have strongly preferred that you told me in the interview because then we can prepare and work together. So when we're thinking about your own career transition, I want you to start to think about self-assessment. And I have a quick exercise that I do with folks. We won't do it all out today, but I'll explain it. The first step is to look at that resume that you have that is way too long. The one you can't send anyone, we all have it, that has every single job on it. And I want you to think of every single job and what you learned and the skill that you got there. Every job you've had has added a skill or an experience to what I joke and say is your career toolkit. Just because you left the job and went on someplace new does not mean that those skills that cannot come with you. And then When you clarify that, these are a few of the jobs I've had. So early on in my career, I worked at an office supply company doing data entry. When I tell you this was probably the first job I had that I could not stand, I learned very quickly there that anything analytics is not my jam. If you want to see real tears, try and put me in Excel. That whole making the Excel spreadsheet and making the PowerPoint after, it does not work for me, ever. Qualtrics, SPSS, even worse. I learned all those things when I worked as a marketing assistant. Then I worked in admissions. I say it very nicely here. I say student-centered approach. But when you present to high school students at 7 a.m., to get them excited and to listen and not sleep in front of your face, it is an art form. And I did that every single day for a few years. And then I went into career development, and that's where I started. I joke and say I've worked with folks age 18 who don't know what to do with their life, all the way through folks in their 50s and their 60s who want to finally find some joy in their career. So when you do this for yourself, every single job, I then want you to cross out the things you never want to do again. Cross them out. Because remember, this is your vision. This is what you'd like to do. So if you don't want to do it, cross it out. And if you love it, I want you to circle it. These are the skills that you want to leverage every single day. We spend so much time reviewing job descriptions and postings, but have you ever created your own job description to get super clear on what would make you happy? What are the things you'd like to spend your time on? You'll hear me say a few times today, imagine building a career where you are strengthening your strengths and not constantly working on the weaknesses. This may be a little controversial, but I tell my clients behind closed doors and one-on-one, strengthening your weaknesses, we only do that when it makes us more money. That's when we work on the weaknesses. Imagine if we got to work on the things that bring us joy, that naturally come to us. Your strengths plus your interests plus your values is the equation to building a career that you love when it comes to self-assessment. It's really key that we get clear on the things that you'd like to do. Many times when folks come to me, they'll say, oh my gosh, Kimberly, I'd love to work with you. I just feel so stuck in my career. I don't know what I want to do. And when I start to ask them questions, they're not able to even articulate what they want their day to look like. One of my favorite exercises that I do with clients is called the ideal day, where I walk you through in the morning from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you go to sleep at night, what you want to do in that day. Not thinking about the industry, not thinking about your boss, not necessarily thinking about the tasks, but what would make you happy if we were able to structure your ideal day. And I want you to think about that in terms of your career. Next up, we need to evaluate those past experiences to understand where you want to go next. Your problem is to bridge the gap that exists between where you are not and the goal you intend to reach. This is my favorite quote, because when we're talking about anything that you'd like to attain in your career or in your life, honestly, there's you on one side and there's the goal on the other. For some of you, that next move could just be you having a conversation, telling someone that that's what you want to do. For other folks, there may be a gap in skills, experiences, something that you need to attain, another degree. But whatever it is, we need to figure out what that gap is so that we can attack it and we can be action focused. On the back of my book, I say, you have to put the ball in your court because you are the only person responsible for the trajectory of your career. And it starts with understanding what that gap is and building a plan of attack. So, by a show of hands again, we've got to raise them high. I want you to tell me where you are in your career when we think about these 4 career designations. So number 1 is right role, right time. You have probably been in your job under 18 months. You don't necessarily know the ropes yet. There's still a lot of room to grow, but you know, I'm not yet ready to move. I don't really need a stretch assignment. I've got to master where I am before I think about where I'm going next. Who here is right role, right time? Okay. I see a few. All right, next up is right role, new skills. You've probably been in your job at least 18 months, and you have a well-oiled machine. You have standard operating procedures. People probably ask you, can you help me do this? Can you show me how you do this? And you can explain those things, but you're not quite ready for the next role, so you're looking for a project. You're looking to lead something. You're looking to do something a little bit different in your current role to prepare you for where you'd like to go. Who here would be right role, new skills? Show of hands. Okay, I see a few here too. Next up is what I call that power lateral again, where you've done all you can in your current role. So again, over 18 months, probably at least 24. And in order for you to make your next move and learn that new skill, you cannot do it where you currently are. You know that you needed a new role, but it may not be promotional. It could be lateral. Who is new role, new skills? Okay. And last but not least is the new role, new experience. And this is that traditional promotional role. And it honestly brings you right back to right role, right time all over again, because you're a fish out of water. Again, over 24 months, you have great relationships, everything is moving and grooving, and it is time for your promotion. Who is that? Okay, perfect. So we have a good range here. When you're thinking about this, when you're on the right role side, I want you to start thinking about, do you know where your role fits in your organization? Have you made any changes or added a stamp? Have you collaborated? And what would it mean? What would be meaningful for you to learn before you make a transition? And on the other side, you're thinking a lot more about your relationships. What are the takeaways? What is the legacy you've left? We're going to talk about relationships later, but when we're thinking about making that transition, relationships are crucial to have. The answers to these questions help articulate your value. So we've done the self-assessment side, but the next part is articulating that in a way that communicates the value and what you're bringing to the workplace. Many times we treat ourselves similar to that television show, X Factor or The Voice, right? When we think about The Voice, if anyone here watches The Voice, it's the singers, they're on stage singing and the judges have their backs turned. And they only turn when they hear something unique. And when they hear it, they turn around and they get to be on a team. Many times we treat our careers like that, where we're just hoping someone's gonna turn around and raise their hand and say, hey, we want you. We have to be able to articulate our own value because we're not on The Voice. Adam Levine is not waiting to pick us up on our team, or Gwen Stefani, Blake Shelton, none of them. They're not there for us. We have to make sure we're able to articulate who we are. And when you can articulate your value, you can negotiate a higher salary. Now, we're not going to do salary negotiations, so don't get too excited. I apologize in advance. That's a whole other workshop that we'd be teaching. But the secret to salary negotiation is that the money resides where the value resides. And the value resides in your impact. When you know who you are, you know your skills, your interests, your passions, you can communicate what you've gained in your career and how you've shown value and impact. That is what drives the salary conversation. So next up, we are going to talk about establishing your personal and professional brand to make sure it aligns with where you want to go. Again, when we talked about that gap, many times it could be skills, it can be experiences that we're missing, but also making sure that we are congruent with where we'd like to go. Have you ever had a conversation with a boss before and you've wanted to get a promotion and they've said, you know, you're just kind of missing, I don't know what it is, but I feel like you just need more relationships or you need a little more time. Anyone ever had a conversation like that where they got some feedback that was kind of ambiguous? Many times that is talking about our personal and professional brand, is that our brand does not look like, feel like, sound like where we'd like to go. Cultivating relationships starts with the experience you provide to anyone who interacts with you. I joke with my clients all the time and I say that when I think about personal branding, I say, my name is Kimberly Brown and I'm going to give you the Kimberly Brown experience wherever I go. And it may be corny, but it really is an experience. I was sitting on the side today and someone walked up when you were encouraged to network and introduced themselves to me. They asked where I was from, why I was here, and I mentioned that I was a speaker, and immediately they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to give you your time. And I was like, no. I have a rule. Whenever I'm speaking, the moment I put myself wherever the audience is, that means my speaking engagement has started. That means I'm here for you. That means you can't stop me. It does not matter if I'm reapplying my lipstick, if I'm sitting in the corner, I am on and I'm here for the audience that is here because that's aligned to the personal brand. It doesn't matter if, let's say, my flight was delayed or I was tired or I got some unsavory news before I got on stage. The brand is the experience and how you interface with me. If you come up and ask me a question and I act like I don't have time, You're gonna go back to CalPERS and be like, so that speaker you got last year, let's make sure she doesn't come back again. Let's blackball her in all of California because she wasn't friendly. And I will say, everyone in California is lovely. As someone who's from the East Coast, California is lovely. I always have to remember when I get here that people are naturally nice, and it does not mean that they're probably going to rob me or do something that I don't know or get pickpocketed. They just genuinely are nice. It's a completely different experience. I have to remember, the South in California, folks are wildly nice. That's a part of the personal brand. We know that. That's a part of the personal brand of the state of California. So I want you to think about you. When you think about your brand is comprised of 4 elements: your character, your actions, your skills, and your experiences. Your character and actions are the internal side. Those are the things that generally stay the same no matter where you are. How you approach something, how you think about doing things. I know in high school, I had a high school band teacher, Mr. Ketterer. He believed that early is on time and on time is late. He had our parents sign forms and said that if you are late for the bus, no matter where we were, you will get left, and it is the expense of your parents to get you back home wherever you are. And he would leave you all of the time because early is on time and on time is late. Because of that, I run on time all the time. I also have a military father. So everything is regimented in how we do things. I can't take that away. If you invite me to your birthday party, I'm probably going to be there helping you set up because I just couldn't help but come right on time. When we think about our skills and experiences, these are our work experiences, volunteer experiences, educational experiences. Again, that toolkit, that career toolkit that comes together to support us in the workplace every single day. All of these things make up your personal and professional brand. I want you to think for a moment about how your network experiences you in any of these scenarios. When I worked at American Express, I had a global job, and something they don't tell you about global jobs is that you work global time zones. We all think it's exciting, like, oh my gosh, I'll get to travel, I get to work with different places. It's not as fun when you're on the phone with India at like 5 a.m. or Australia at 7 or 8 p.m. I had to be very conscious of how I showed up. I couldn't just show up on East Coast time and only be friendly for East Coast. I needed to create the same experience for my colleagues around the world. How do people experience you when you're in a team gathering, when you're really stressed out? I know for me, I do breathing exercises before I get on stage, but I do them in my room before I come down so I can calm myself so that I can be present the moment I'm in the room. How about water cooler conversations? When we think things are really casual, as someone who used to work in talent acquisition and recruiting, we would travel all over the US for events. And many times at recruiting events, there's alcohol. People act a little bit different when there's alcohol involved. How do people see you then? Or even when there's a change to adapt to, or you have to repeat yourself. Has anyone ever gotten the feedback that you need to fix your face? Yes. People who are laughing got the feedback. Yes, 100%. There's always someone who, when change happens on the call, you can see every emotion on their face clearly. That is about your personal brand too. Are you the person where people assume, oh my gosh, I saw Susan's face and it is going to be a problem. I know it, I know it, I know it. The second I get off this call, I'm getting a Slack and it's not going to be good. That's aligned to someone's personal brand as well, in how they're interacting and experiencing you every single day. So I ask you again, is how people are experiencing you congruent with where you'd like to go? And even as we think about some of the leaders who we are inspired by every single day, how do we experience them? I remember one of my favorite leaders when I was working in higher education. Her name was Dr. Sherry Coe Perkins. She worked at Long Island University. I used to say that she could turn down someone with more grace than I'd ever seen. She'd be in a board meeting, and I felt like she was telling someone that was the worst idea in their entire life. But she said it with so much grace that the person felt seen, they felt heard, they felt respected, and they didn't feel like it was a personal attack that their idea wasn't accepted. That was a part of who she was. Yes, she was stern. Yes, she got amazing things done at the university, but she did it with grace, even in tough situations. When you think about how people are experiencing you, I want you to start to think about your network. Generally, there's us in the middle, and then we have a few folks scattered around. Who here feels like you are a master networker? Show of hands. You are great. There's some of you who are, because I saw when they said network, some people jumped up and started talking to one another. But I don't see as many hands this time around. So to make it a little easier for you, the favorite chapter in my book is called Relationships Are Still Everything. Because relationships are one of the few things that can expedite your success. So I have a framework I share about the 5 core relationships that you need. And I find many times, especially for introverts, this makes networking a little bit easier because you can compartmentalize and figure out where are your actual gaps when it comes to building relationships, when it comes to showcasing your personal brand and showcasing who you are. So we have our colleagues. Those are internal and external to our industry. You have colleagues in this room, internal and external to your company, to your industry. And it allows you to gain a deeper understanding of what's happening at large. You never want to be in a bubble of just only knowing your company, only knowing your industry. Knowledge is power, and you want to make sure you're expanding as much as possible. Next up, we have teachers. This is probably one of the most underrated relationships. Sometimes I call them coaches too. But these are the folks who can teach you something, coach you in a safe environment. So prime example, when I used to be in higher education and I was interviewing, anyone here in higher ed? Okay. So you'll laugh if it resonates with you, but in higher education, they used to love to do interviews that you'd have 5 rounds of interviews, 6 rounds of interviews, and I see the folks nodding. And you meet the entire free world, by the way, when you're there. It's not like you meet 1 or 2 people. I've had interviews with 20 people on the other side of the table, and that only happens in higher ed. But you need someone to coach you, to help you. So for me, when I started getting into higher ed, into more senior level roles, I had someone who would coach me on how to present and interview when there were significant people in the room. Or when I had to teach something as part of a presentation, and I had to learn where I couldn't just give it all away in an interview, because what you're not gonna do is have me do a really great presentation and then not hire me and take my work. But I had to show you that I was smart, but not give the whole thing away. I had teachers who coached me through how to do an interview process where I had to give away my intellectual property. Because those were things I didn't know, and I did it in a safe environment. It wouldn't have been safe for me to just wing it and try. I had to do it behind closed doors, learn it, so when I went out into the world, everything was a little bit easier. Next up, we have mentors. This is probably the most recognizable relationship that we talk about. And these are the folks who give you real-time feedback. They've been there, they've done that, they can help you. And the relationship that we talk about, especially since there's a lot of women in the room today, that most women are under-sponsored, which is why it's hard to move in the workplace. Sponsors are the relationships that can pick you up from where you are and put you to where they rightfully belong, because they have influence and they have power. And last but not least, you have your peers, and those are the folks at your company, because we all need great people at our companies who can help us. I'm gonna answer a question for myself right now, because the #1 question I get after this slide is, can someone serve multiple purposes? Yes, they definitely can, but I challenge you to think, does this person actually fulfill the responsibilities? Many times we can have amazing mentors, but if they do not have influence and power, they cannot be your sponsor. And even though we may love them, they may be amazing. If they don't have the influence and power to open a door for you, get you an interview, make an introduction, they can't be a sponsor. If someone doesn't have the patience to teach you something when needed and put in that time after hours with you, they can't be a teacher. If they generally haven't been where you are and can help you make those moves, they can't necessarily be your mentor. But some of us can get lucky, and we can have some folks who do double duty. The goal is that your relationships start to expand, and it's not just one person you have in each seat, but it's everyone else in their networks. One of the examples I always share of myself is when I was in higher education, I was in a book club. And I don't know how I got in this book club, but I was the only non-lawyer in the entire book club. I used to joke and say I made less than all of their legal aids at that point compared to where these lawyers were. So when you talk to me, people wouldn't assume, but I have connections at some of the top law firms in the city because I was in that book club for years. Fun fact, in college, I won every single talent show at homecoming with a band that we put together because I studied vocal jazz for 10 years. The man who played piano for me in college is now a Grammy-nominated producer. He's produced John Legend's Greenlight. He's done work with Ledisi, Mariah Carey. So in the music world, I'm like, I'm no longer doing that and I am not singing from the stage. Just putting that out there. But I'm very connected in music as well because I love it. I'm the person who always goes to the concert, always goes to the show, and I like to stay very connected. When you're looking at someone, it's never just who you see in front of you. It's all of the people around. And when you have a strong personal and professional brand, that is when people are open to making those introductions. Many times when I used to work in higher ed, I'd have someone who I met as a freshman and they reach back as a senior or when they're in grad school and ask for a letter of recommendation. But I hadn't talked to them in years. And I always share that you have to keep the relationships going so you can get quality referrals, quality connections. You don't need to have this massive network of people, but you do need to have many of the relationships that I talked about and make sure that they are strong, they are consistent, and they are in support of where you'd like to go in your career. So the final section, I'm not sure where we are on time. I'm good? Okay. I always like to leave room for questions, so I'm going to give the caveat now. If you have questions, please get them ready. The first 7 people who ask live questions, I have something special for you. Or you could put them in the app as well if you're shy, but I love to take them live. Next up, we need to put it all together in this final section, putting it into action. With my book, the last chapter is all about putting together a 2-year career strategy to make your next move. Many times when I'm hired as a speaker, I tell folks that, yes, I like to tell jokes, yes, I like to have fun, but I like to help people take action. Because action and creating behavior change is what changes our career. Being motivated and inspired, it feels good, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle. So without a career strategy, it's not uncommon to feel that I'm just working just to work. You feel unsatisfied, you feel disconnected, you feel that general stuck feeling. Having a career strategy, regardless of if you are happy, if you are sad, if you love your job, you're not sure how you feel about your job, you don't know what your next move is, it's important to have that strategy so you can be in charge of the trajectory of where you'd like to go in your career. Many companies may have their own career pathing, but I encourage professionals to have their own regardless. Make sure you have a plan that is for you, by you, only about what you would like. As a former corporate leader myself and building teams, I know when I did career pathing, as excited as I was for people to move on, I really want you to stay. I really want to have great successors in building a team. You need an unbiased career strategy. So I have the components here. So one, of course, is that self-assessment. To identify your weaknesses, identify your strengths, but again, we're only working on those weaknesses if it makes us money or helps us bridge that gap, if it is something that is crucial to you making that next move. It's also comprised of having clear, short, and long-term goals. Goals serve as milestones or markers for your career strategy, even though they're a moving target. Many times we can be afraid to kind of put a stake in the ground and say that this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go, because what if it changes? And that's okay. When I worked in higher ed, first I worked in admissions, then I worked in career development. And to this day, I still remember the first time I worked with a student, and I knew they got a job as a direct result of working with me. I was hooked. To me, it was the best feeling in the world. The student was at a career fair and her dream media company was there and she freaked out and she ran out. She's like, I don't think I can do it. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And she left in tears. And we had a little coaching session out in the corner. We coached her through making an introduction. I said, come back to the office. We're gonna get you an interview and we'll prep. She ended up working at that company for 7 years. And then I knew, I'm like, this is what I want to do. I love career development. So I slowly but surely started to work my way up through various universities. And after about, I think it was like 7, 8 years, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to move into what would be a director role. I had the experience. I loved the industry. So I started applying. And I slowly started applying to director level roles at small and mid-sized universities. However, like I know many people have experienced, I came up as top 2, and I was not number 1 like Beyonce. I was number 2. And I tell hiring managers all the time, no one likes to hear when they say, you know, if I had 2 roles, I would have hired both of you. I'm so sorry. Nobody on the receiving end likes to hear that. And when I tell you, I heard it again and again and again and again. And one of my final interviews, I knew I had it. I knew it, I felt it. I had a pre-existing relationship with the university. I had met the provost and the president and the office, did the presentation, did all the things. We talked salary, everything was green. But they called me and they said, hey, if we had 2, we would have hired both of you. And it was one of those processes that took about 2 months, and I was devastated. And I'm very big on, you know, what's for you will be for you. But this was probably one of those job experiences where I didn't care about that. You couldn't tell me that at that time. I was crying, and that's normally not how I respond to jobs, but I saw myself. I knew the coat I was gonna wear. It was fall in Manhattan. I knew the boots that I was going to buy. I had the outfit as I got off the train on my first day of work. I already saw it. So when that call came, I remember sitting in my office at my current university, and I had a lamp in there. I turned all the lights off, like, don't talk to me. I just wanted to do my job and just not think about it. But a week later, they called me back. And they're like, hey, our number 1 candidate rescinded his acceptance. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, I could still get the jacket. I could still get the boots. I guess it's for me. And I was like, all right, you know, things happen. I'll be all right. I'm so excited. We talked salary again, talked numbers. They wanted me to come back in one more time, but I did not get an offer letter in writing. And this is why I tell everyone, don't get excited until you get an offer letter. About a week and a half later with scheduling, they said, you know what? We've decided to go in a different direction. And when I tell you, I was just angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just beside myself, pure, unfiltered rage about that whole entire process. So then I was like, you know what? I'm not looking for a job. I'm just gonna hang out. I'm just gonna figure it out. I don't know what's going to happen. So I waited a few months. By then it was like October. I told you it was fall. In November, my partner at the time was at a networking event, and he met someone and he said, hey, you're doing something that I think my partner would like to do. Can I connect y'all? I think you would really get along. And we all know if you make a connection after Thanksgiving, no one is talking to you till the new year. That's just, we know it's code. Don't try to schedule a meeting. But around December 15th, she emailed me and said, hey, this job sounds like what your partner said you want, and it's currently open. Would you be interested in interviewing? And I said, sure. That was December 15th. I had an offer before Christmas. I signed, went through all the background before the new year, and I resigned the first day I came back. And I share that because when we create goals sometimes, that was when I moved from higher education to corporate America. That was not on my 2-year career strategy, but I think it's important that we have goals, we have targets, but we leave room for magic in our careers. We leave room for circumstances to happen that we didn't expect. Now as an entrepreneur, people love to ask, well, how did you know it was time to leave corporate America? And I always say it was on my radar, but the circumstances changed where I had to change my own career plan and decide what worked best. And evolve your personal and professional brand, which is step 3. You have to make sure that your brand aligns to the value that you are able to consistently deliver no matter where you are. And last but not least is elevating your authority. Regardless of whether you are an administrative assistant, you are a director, you are a manager, you are an analyst, you are a coordinator, you run the domain that you're in. Your job description is your domain, and to lead expertly in that arena without question is key to make sure you are positioning yourself for your next best move. So with that, I have a little freebie for you. Sometimes the QR code doesn't work, so if you just go to nextmovebestmovebook.com, In the book, I give a template to make your own 2-year career strategy. So if you're interested in going through the 4 steps on your own, this template can help you do so. And with that, I'd love to open it up to Q&A. I see a hand over here on the end. I love that you raised it high. You were ready. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Adriana Griffin from Calvet. I have pivoted from a almost 30-year career in the military, so just by nature, it was time to retire from that, and a lot of self-help books, conferences. But the question that I have is, in the relationships sponsorship, is it appropriate? And can you give an example of how to request sponsorship? Sometimes people don't understand what it is, and they're in the positions, they have the clout. So if you could share on that.
Definitely. So sponsorship, I say, first and foremost, sponsorship always starts with doing great work where you're planted. The basis of someone being comfortable in sponsoring is seeing you in a light. So making sure this person has had exposure to what you've done and can see that you are showing up in the way that they would like to see you show up. And then if we're honest, it's just asking and being as specific as possible. Do you want an introduction? Do you need someone to write a kudos email? I've worked in organizations where they knew it was time for promotion when other leaders were like, oh my gosh, we should promote Kathy. Oh my gosh, Stacia's doing really good. We know she's ready. It was a culture of they needed the email to know that folks were ready. Do you need an introduction? I would be extremely specific. As long as you've built the relationship and built that social equity, be specific in exactly what you'd like. No problem. I see you have kept your hand raised this whole time.
Hello. I wanted to know, where was you at when you got ready to write your book? What inspired you to write your book? I'm thinking about writing something, but I want to know when you said it's time to write a book.
So if I'm very honest, I was speaking in a lot of rooms like this, and people assumed I had one. And they would be like, oh my gosh, Kimberly, you have to tell me where to get your book. And I was like, I have like a downloadable guide. I have a digital course, but I didn't have one. So part of it was being asked. My audience said they wanted a book. And also I felt like there was a gap in the workplace where when we look at senior leaders, many senior leaders have executive coaching, but they don't talk about it. Most senior leaders who've gotten into very senior roles have had someone behind the scenes coaching them on their executive presence, on their skills, on everything. And the organizations even pay for it, but it's not publicized. And if it is publicized, it's not available to more junior level employees until you get to that place. And I wanted to write something that would help the mid-career professional. I know that many times mid-career professionals may not have the funds or the sponsorship to get career coaching. So when I thought about my book, I was like, I feel like it filled a gap in the workplace of if you have never had a career coach and you want to make your next move and position yourself for senior level roles, read the book, do the things, and you will be okay. I think the thing that makes me the most proud is when I get letters of people following like my salary negotiation framework. Even my neighbor the other day, my neighbor stopped me last year and said she negotiated $25,000 on her salary. Mind you, she's been at my house for girls' night, but didn't tell me and didn't ask any questions. So I wanted something that people could do on their own, and for me, that was proof. Writing a book is really hard, though. I will say about that is that people think writing a book, the hardest part is writing it, but they don't realize the second hardest part is selling it. Remember, they call it New York Times bestseller. They don't call it New York Times best writer, best author, best story. It is bestseller. So as excited as people are about writing books, the other side is how are you going to sell the book? Perfect. Any other questions? I see one all the way over here.
Hello, I'm Mary Joy Coburn from OSERS, and thank you again. This was exceptional. I took a lot of pictures. My question is regarding personal branding. The traditional mindset has been to separate your personal and professional lives, but with social media and online presence, I've been seeing both merging. So what is your take? Should we keep them separate, or is it okay to merge them?
I think you have to do what is uniquely authentic to you and what feels good. And I know that answers but doesn't answer your question, but it's some people are okay being in an environment where they feel like they have to code switch. They are perfectly fine walking into work and putting the face on to do what they have to do, and they are fine, they are happy, they live amazing lives outside of work, and they are good with that. Other folks feel like there's a dissonance in who they are and that they're being fake, and it doesn't feel good. So I always say, figure out what feels authentic to who you are. I know for me personally, being online, doing social media, doing speaking like this, I'm present online. I love talking about my nephews. I love talking about my dog. I love talking about baking bread, and I tell stories about my father. But you'll notice there are quite a few things I don't talk about in any way, shape, or form. So I think coming up with the line of what is good for you. Years ago, when Kerry Washington, anyone here watch Scandal? Yes, okay. So years ago, Scandal, if you remember, was one of the first shows where people live tweeted. That was not a thing before Scandal, where you would get on the internet and live tweet while you're watching. If you know anything about Kerry Washington, you probably cannot name most of the movies that she's in because she's a method actress. Her goal has always been to disappear into the work. It was not about the social or the celebrity. So when people started live tweeting, it was really hard, she said, to I need to show up and just be Kerry? I can't just be Olivia? Because Scandal became so massive. She worked with someone and determined what are the areas that she speaks about. So when you think about Kerry Washington, we know she loves yoga. We know she has 2 kids, but we don't see them. We know she's married. We don't see him. Very rarely does he come out. We know she's very much into politics. She will openly support candidates, unapologetically. And she generally just shows herself having a good time, but she keeps a lot private. And that's what feels good. So I challenge folks to do the same for themselves. I see 2 here, 1 here and here. Yes.
Hi, my name is Christine Goodhart-Humphrey, and I'm from Kern County. You had mentioned, and one of the slides showed the different roles, and I'm at that last role, the new role.
New experience.
New experiences. How do you maybe work with a sponsor to get to that? Because I've done all of the others, and I've been in my position for many moons, probably over the 24 months by 25 years.
Got it. Just a little, smidge, yeah.
Just a little bit. But I'm always looking for ways to expand on that.
Great question. So one of my favorite questions to ask sponsors, to ask mentors, to ask any advocate for your career is, what do you need to see from me in order to know I'm ready for my next move? So in order to ask that question, you need to know what the next move is that you'd like, but to candidly ask that question, and to be very frank, be quiet after you ask it. Many folks will ask that question and then ramble. You say, what do you need to see from me in order to know I am ready for XYZ role, for XYZ move, and then hush. And listen to the words that that person is saying. What are they saying that you are missing? Is it a time thing? I know some industries, when I worked in higher ed, many times my director had been in the role 25 years. So it was not possible, and they were only in their 50s or early 60s. They were not leaving or retiring. So I would have to leave in order to do what I wanted to do. But if it's not something like that, it's is your executive presence, is your socialization, is it they haven't seen you do something, what is it? And if they say something that you're doing, then we need to think about how can we socialize and magnify your work so that they can see it and check back in. Ideally, ask this question at least 6 months before any performance appraisal so that you have time to change before that happens. Because it's terrible when you ask this question and all the decisions are made, and then you need to wait a whole other year if you have an organization that waits a whole year for promotion. I saw another hand over here. Yes.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm from the Bay Area. And my question was more for to get ready for an interview. Is there such a thing as too much of a response or not enough? And is it okay to ask them questions as well? When they ask, do you have any questions for me?
Yes,
yes,
100%.
no.
Yes.
Just curious, how do you prep for an interview if you have to?
Okay, so number one of my biggest gripes with career development is that we've developed a culture where we feel like we should just know what to do in interview situations in the workplace, and we don't practice. We think we practice, but we don't. We walk in cold. We walk into important meetings, interviews, like we are running a marathon and have not run a mile. And we expect to do well and don't understand why the first time we tried something, it didn't go. So number one is making sure that you are starting to rehearse some of the answers. Most interviews you'll have are going to be behavioral, unless you're in consulting and you'll do case. But most folks is behavioral, so practicing the STAR method. Practicing telling stories, showing the situation you were in, the tasks you were assigned, the actions you took, and what were the results, so that you don't ramble. Because when you get to the results, it automatically should teach you to like, oh, okay, like I'm done. So let me stop here. And 100% ask questions. Every interview you have is as much you interviewing them as them interviewing you. It's your only time, most of the time, to spend time with folks to understand the culture of the organization, their needs, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. So yes, prepare questions every single time. I haven't got questions from like this middle area. Anyone in the middle over here? Oh, right here, got it. So we're gonna go right here, yes. I love that your friends all advocated for you.
My name is Leela Kennedy. I'm with Strategic Global Advisors. And my question is, when you're looking for those relationships like mentors or sponsors and things like that, do you find it's more trial and error, or that you have like a checklist that you look for when you're looking for those people?
Oh, great question. I love that. So I teach people that building relationships is just like dating. It's literally the same thing. We don't like to think about it that way, but it is just like dating. So for many of us who've been on online dating, if you went on one bad date, and I'm sure you've been on more than one bad one, I know I have. If you stopped dating because you did not connect with that one person, then most people would end up single, because it takes time to meet and connect with people. Finding mentors and sponsors is the same thing, because there's an element of you personally clicking, you getting along. Some folks you may meet, I joke and say, like, some folks are a little spicy, and you may not like them. You may not feel comfortable disclosing what you're working on, how you're doing it, and that's okay. And you can move on and find someone else. I don't think that's a situation where you need to like latch to one person. Even when you feel like there's a sponsor who you really, really want, I always think about, well, who else influences that sponsor if I don't get along with this person? One person does not stop the show. I think managers have a lot of control, and building relationships is one of the ways to help decentralize that, by building relationships with your manager, around your manager, and same for your sponsors. So find people who give you what you need and understand what you need in whatever season. I know for me, I'm personally someone, I like the person who's spicy. I can't stand feedback that does not actually tell me what I need to do. The person who's spicy is going to tell me immediately, this is what you need to do, this is what you did, I don't understand why you did that, and you should have done this instead. And I will always like that over, you know, you're just doing a really great job, keep on doing what you're doing and everything will be fine. No, it's not. I like someone who gives that level of feedback. So find what you need. I have mentors and sponsors in various areas. Some folks will rub my back and give me good news. Some folks will be like, why are you on my phone doing that? I told you not to do it. So date your mentors and sponsors, and you can find different folks for different seasons as well. Every season you may need a new group. So I know with that, I just got the wrap-up card, but I will be here during the reception. So if you have any questions, I am here. And thank you so much for your time today.
Wasn't that amazing? Was that not amazing? All right, please give Kimberly Brown another round of applause. That was a completely insightful presentation. I too personally want all the details when I'm getting my giving feedback and getting feedback. So I just want to close out and just remind everyone that two things. First, this coming up week is Women's Equality Day. Did you guys know that? No, you didn't. No, you didn't, because if you knew, you would have been up on your feet, remembering the hidden figures of the women that go before us, who have been nameless and faceless and written out of history. I'll just say it again. We honor the women because this week we are celebrating Women's Equality Day. Thank you. And with that, I also would like to make a public service announcement that at 5:30 we are going to begin our social hour. Cocktails, ladies and gentlemen. It's cocktail time. So please join us on the 5th floor for a wrap-up session. If you were inspired today, please come and acknowledge Kimberly Brown. And I hope you got something out of everything today. My name is Malia Cohen. It's an honor to serve and represent you in Sacramento every day. Thank you.